Hey guys, I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, and I'm coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of New York. So most of you know that whenever I do a podcast, I usually just do the audio, but sometimes I also add the video. So for some of you, you might be watching this on our YouTube channel, which has grown so much just in the last 12 months. I want to thank all of you guys that have been basically taking us from like unknown on YouTube to tens of thousands of followers and subscribers on YouTube. I don't know why. I don't know what changed, but we are so thankful for you. And if you haven't become a subscriber, join in, follow us on YouTube. We actually have most of our podcasts come out on YouTube, and we do very special video clips, from the field. I usually have this cheapo phone that I'm recording this video on now. I don't have any equipment. I wish I could kind of show you around my messy hotel room here in New York City that I just arrived at. I'm actually on my way from meetings in the UK to meetings in Idaho, and I'm super excited about joining our friends in Idaho. And then at the end of this week, I'll be doing a mission conference in Indianapolis at one of the churches of our good friends. But I'm so thankful that we've had so many people in the last year that have joined us on our YouTube channel. I don't know why. Like I said, we went from something like 3,000 to over 60,000 in a very short amount of time. Many of our videos were watched by like 3 people, and one of those was probably my mother. And in the last year, we now have several million views, that have, and I think one of our shorts had just several million views just by itself. And so I don't know what's going on, but I'm thankful. And this is a special year for this to happen, really, for me anyway, because I don't know why, but there's just been this focus on North Korea, both in prayer and in my writing. For those of you that have been following Back to Jerusalem for some time, you'll know that I'm kind of an amateur historian, and I love to follow the stories of the underground house church, the people that you never hear about, individuals who, in my opinion, are heroes of the faith in our age, that are alive today, that are doing amazing things, but yet you never hear about them because they don't advertise what they do. And oftentimes they live in closed countries where the activities that they're involved in could actually get them killed. So naturally, they don't record their activities. They don't write them down. They don't share about them. And I feel that one of my jobs, one of the callings that God has put upon my life, is to witness the things that are taking place on the ground, and to make sure a lot of these stories make it into the history books. So for the last 25, 26 years that I have been living in China, I've had the rare opportunity to follow with these leaders of the faith. And one of the pioneers of missions in especially North Korea, where I've just kind of felt this explosion of energy to write about. So we just put out a book called Jesus in North Korea, and that must be hitting a chord because we're seeing so many of those books sold. I've been surprised at how many people have bought that book, Jesus in North Korea. It's probably the only book that's out there that talks about the underground house church as more of an overview from the inside, if you can say it that way. Oftentimes, the most books that you hear about North Korea come from individuals that have escaped from North Korea. And so they share about North Korea from their own stories, from their own testimonies. But Jesus in North Korea is a little different. We talk about the history of the underground house church, how it started in North Korea. What's the situation today? How people are able to get in, how they're able to minister, how I'm able to get into North Korea, how I'm able to minister in North Korea. I share those details, and I don't think you'll really find them almost anywhere else. And then I talk about the vision of the church, or the vision of the Christians that we work together with. And very few of them have made an impact on my life like Sister Esther. Sister Esther is someone that I worked with inside of North Korea for several years. She was a soldier on the field. Someone who planted more churches, reached more people, delivered more Bibles inside of North Korea than anybody I've ever met. And if you forget all of that and put all of that to the side, Sister Esther is the only person that I've ever met and that I know of. I mean, I've done searches on this and I've never seen anybody that was arrested and thrown in prison in North Korea and China and lived to tell the story as Sister Esther has. Sister Esther is going to be on tour in Sweden. Her book, we just did a reprint. Her first book sold out. And now we've just done a second run on her book in Sweden. Her book is called Smuggling Light. It's a book that I wrote several years ago and it's still selling. And it plays a big part in much of what I write about in Jesus in North Korea. A lot of my exposure came from working together with her, getting Bibles into North Korea, planting churches in North Korea, and meeting with believers from North Korea and following them inside and helping them while they're inside. I share stories about how Esther was able to work with underground house church members from North Korea and China, as well as follow them back into North Korea and support them in North Korea. Now, a lot of people come to me today and ask, what is the situation in North Korea? Are there Christians in North Korea? And the answer is a resounding yes. How many? I don't know. I'm not able to give any real hard numbers. I just know about the small number of people that I'm able to work with inside of North Korea. But I believe that the number of believers is much greater than the people that I'm working with. And numerically speaking, in China in the 1980s, there were reporters that just assumed that most Christians had already deceased in China since the 1949 takeover. And so when journalists were finally allowed back into China in the 1980s and in the 1990s, the big question for China was, are there Christians still here? After the missionaries were kicked out in 1949, the idea was that Christianity might not be able to survive without those Western missionaries. And to our surprise, in the 1980s, as the doors began to open up and journalists began to ask questions, one journalist is recorded as asking Mao Zedong's wife what the situation was for Christians inside of China in the early 1980s. And her response, before she was tried and convicted of kind of a coup, inside of China, before she was tried and convicted, she told the reporter that the only sign of Christianity in our nation is at the Chinese History Museum. It is there that you will find a Bible. That Bible is the only evidence that Christianity ever existed inside of China. But now we know that she could not have been more wrong. She was dead wrong. Today, in 2025, we can see that Mao Zedong and his wife are dead, but Jesus is very much alive. In fact, not only did Christianity survive the years of Mao Zedong, but it thrived. Somehow, in the fires of persecution, the church grew. It grew beyond anything that we could ever imagine. It grew beyond even the best days of measuring for the missionaries who were in China, who could only find a few thousand believers that accepted Christ inside of China. But after the doors began to open in China in the 1980s, we were able to look inside and see that the church had grown by millions. That was not known. I believe the same is true for North Korea. We might be looking at North Korea today. I travel in North Korea. I've been working with the church in North Korea. I've been serving in North Korea for 2 decades. But I still am convinced that I don't know the first thing about the church in North Korea. I'm convinced that when the veil is open and we're able to look inside for the first time with absolute freedom of being able to measure the number of Christians in North Korea, we will be blown away by what we didn't know. So many people think that the church in North Korea is dead. It doesn't exist. But I have been convinced that the church is very much like what we saw in China. In North Korea, it's thriving. Now, I don't have evidence of a massive revival inside of North Korea, but I have been curious about why there's been so many Bibles needed. Where are those Bibles going to? Who is requesting them? Why is there such a massive need? Because there is. The Christian believers that I'm connected with inside of North Korea are begging for Bibles, and we are meeting that need. Now, we're not able to meet all of the Bibles that they need, but we have a small window of opportunity right now inside of North Korea to bring Bibles into the nation. And I'm asking for people that have been praying for Back to Jerusalem and underground church around the world to now begin to focus their prayers on North Korea. This year, God has just put it onto my heart to really write stories about North Korea. And you're going to see several of them come out within the next 6 months. We have Jesus in North Korea, which kind of piggybacks off of Esther's story, Sister Esther, who did so much planting of churches and delivering of Bibles inside of North Korea. I was able to work together with her, and I was able to work with another guy by the name of Peter Hun. My first time into North Korea actually was together with Peter Hun. And now his story will be coming out within the next 2 months. Before the end of the year, we plan to publish his story to share about how he was able to plant more businesses and get more opportunities for more missionaries inside North Korea than anybody I've ever met. Peter Hun opened up the door. What Sister Esther did for the local church inside of North Korea, Peter Hun did for the missionaries to North Korea. I was able to bring in so many Chinese missionaries because of what Peter Hun did. I was able to start so many businesses together with the Chinese, completely separate from Peter Hun, because of the doors that he opened. And he didn't just open up the doors for me and the Chinese underground house church workers that I served together with. He opened up the door for so many missionaries. In fact, I refer to him as the Moses of North Korea, because he opened the door, provided the path to the land that has been considered to be unreached for generations, North Korea. He has been a key component to get missionaries into a country when missionaries have been told it's impossible to preach in North Korea. It's impossible to even get into North Korea. Peter Hun proved that it is possible. And that which is impossible for man is possible through God. And God used Peter Hun. So we have a couple of books of testimonies directly from the field. And I think that you are going to be greatly blessed. But during this time, we need people to pray for Back to Jerusalem. Pray for our work there. Right now, a window of opportunity has just opened up for Bibles to get into North Korea. How long will this window be open? I don't know. But if you go on to Back to Jerusalem and you donate towards the Bible section, we are using that money for Bibles in North Korea. We are sending in Bibles right now. I can't give many details about these Bibles because of the nature of the operation. And I can't jeopardize the security by giving away too many details. But I can tell you that a window has opened up, and it has allowed us to bring Bibles into North Korea to feed the hungry Christians that are desperately wanting God's word. And we are providing those Bibles right now, and we can provide more if we have more people partnering together with us. So consider partnering together with Back to Jerusalem and give a donation on backtojerusalem.com specifically for Bibles. And that funding will be used for that purpose. Also consider becoming a Back to Jerusalem gatekeeper. I just did a I just did a kind of, it wasn't a podcast, but it was an Instagram live, I guess, with our friends in Brazil. We have a small office in Brazil run by an amazing brother, who just started doing the Back to Jerusalem 30-day devotional. And I came in, today was day 28, and I was sharing with them how God is using his people in this day and age to bring the gospel into the most unreached areas of the world. And it is there in that 30-day devotional where I was sharing with everybody the needs that are on the ground that we can't always share with everybody else. We can't always be open about what God is doing for fear that we might jeopardize those programs, those projects, those outreaches if we give away too many details. Which is why we have the Back to Jerusalem Gatekeepers. And so when I was on the Brazilian Instagram live, we had people asking about the Back to Jerusalem Gatekeepers. And one of the things that we are not very good at, to be honest, is fundraising. I was just reminded of that, by one of our dear friends. I had, we just had the Back to Jerusalem Hackers Tour where people traveled around, the United States sharing about what we're doing with hackers. So we had, our brother Will from the U.S. office together with Shagufta and her translator, and they took on one part of the tour. I did another part of the tour. And then we had, Nagame and Panahi, who has been partnering with Back to Jerusalem, and one of our hackers that traveled together with Nagame. And we all three shared in different groups around America, specifically sharing about what hackers are doing. And I started to get feedback from that tour saying, hey, you guys weren't giving us information on how to make donations. We weren't really sure on what to donate for. We were happy that you guys came in and blessed us with all this information, but what are we supposed to do with this information? How are we supposed to support the vision? And somehow, God has provided a way for his people just to understand how they can partner with Back to Jerusalem and support the Back to Jerusalem vision with the underground church. And he's shown his mercy where all of the needs have been met. But it has been clear that we are really, really bad at doing fundraising, which is why we need gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are partners who pray with us, partner with us, are our friends. And they give on a monthly basis, and they give for those programs that we're not able to advertise or share about. They give towards those projects that we have to keep a little bit under cover. We have to keep incognito, because we can't jeopardize. Also, we're a small group. We're a small ministry. So we react to things immediately when they happen. And so we're able to help on day one. From the moment that we get that first request that comes in, we're often able to immediately respond because we have gatekeepers that are regularly donating. And so we can use the gatekeeper donations for those immediate needs before we even start with day one of any fundraising effort. That's a huge blessing. And we are so thankful for that. If you are a gatekeeper for Back to Jerusalem, I want to say thank you. You make so much of what we do possible. And I know you might hear that from other ministries, and it's probably true with other ministries, but it's not more true than with Back to Jerusalem. And the reason why is because we're bad at fundraising. And so when we get people that write and say, hey, we need immediate help in this region. And for instance, we just had an immediate need in Afghanistan. And so we responded right away, even before we did any fundraising. When the Zion Church was arrested, we were able to respond right away without the first day of fundraising because of our gatekeepers. We are able to, on that first minute where we get that first phone call, to respond. We are in an amazing place where we can respond to those needs before we even mention them in the public sphere. And the reason is our gatekeepers. Our gatekeepers are in prayer. And even though we may not be great at communication, even though we're horrible at fundraising, gatekeepers are prayer partners who partner together with us. And in their prayers, somehow God speaks to them and lays the vision of Back to Jerusalem on their hearts. Guys, I don't think I've ever really shared about the kind of people that we get donating from around the world. We get people that donate that we don't know anything about. Anonymous donors who give very generously and don't ask for anything in return. They only give because they say, God told me to give this. What can you say about that? I can't put that into a strategy or a plan or a marketing effort to raise more support. Maybe that's why we're so bad. We're so bad at fundraising because there's just been something where God has been laying on people's hearts without us even saying anything about it. And people respond to needs that they don't even know about. That I know that they don't know about because we don't share them with anybody. And yet people from around the world respond. That's who our gatekeepers are. They are people that God has laid a burden on their heart. They pray for us often. They're not just financial donors. They're partners. Partners in the vision. People that believe in the end time vision of the Underground House Church and want to be a part of it. One of the things that I find probably the most encouraging, motivating, if you will. And I know that not all of our team listens to every single podcast that I come out with because we got so much material that comes out there. One of the things that we have a lot of is material. We have our news articles that come out every day. We have our newsletter that comes out bi-monthly. We have the reports that we send to all of our financial partners. We have our podcasts. We have our books, we have our devotionals, we have our children's books, we have a lot of material that just is out there. So people feel inundated, including the people on our team. And I can't help it. Guys, I spend more than 300 days a year traveling, and I'm always writing updates. And this is an outlet. I'm always preaching, teaching, sharing, writing. This is my hobby. This is my life. I don't do anything else. I don't go shooting. I don't go race car driving. I don't go motorcycle driving. I don't go fishing. I don't go hunting. I don't do any of those things that normal people do. This is everything that from the time that I wake up to the time that I go to sleep is all consumed with just pushing out this vision that God has put so heavily inside of me and those that I serve together with, because we have so much information though. Many of the people that work together with me at Back to Jerusalem don't always get to see this podcast. So I don't know how many people that I work with will actually see this podcast, but I'm encouraged to know that so many people that serve with B2J and have been with us for years are also financial donors. They are also gatekeepers. They believe in the vision even though they see behind the curtains. Have you ever been a part of a ministry where you felt like things were so great and so amazing, but then when you got behind the curtains, you realized that, man, there's a lot of things that you didn't know, and you feel that just touching it somehow makes you dirty or polluted, and you feel like the more you know about that ministry, the less you want to be a part of. We have our imperfections and failures, no doubt about it. But for some reason, gatekeepers are just moved by God to give towards this vision. And many of the gatekeepers are people that work for B2J, work for the vision of the underground church. The more they meet with the underground church, the more they see what's happening on the ground, the more they realize that this is a once in a lifetime kind of vision to be a part of. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And so whenever we get gatekeepers that donate and are a part of Back to Jerusalem, we use those for the immediate needs that we see on the ground, much of which we can't talk about. And right now this year, we are seeing a huge push for Bibles in North Korea. I can't tell you what's going to happen in North Korea. I'm not going to give you some prophecy that God has shown me about the doors, flinging wide open in North Korea. Maybe God gives that to you. But for me, I've just had this unexplainable burden to write about North Korea. And you can find that information in Jesus in North Korea, one of our newest books, our best-selling book right now at the moment, as well as the books that we are coming out with in the next couple of months. So follow Back to Jerusalem, because on the back of Jesus in North Korea, you're going to see several books, including one in December, called The Moses of North Korea. And then go back and get Smuggling Light, which is the true story of Esther's work in North Korea. If you are like me and God has put a burden on your heart for the people of North Korea, those books will help you to know how to pray. Those books will inform you about what's taking place on the ground today in North Korea. And if God moves it upon your heart to be a part of what he is doing right now in North Korea, you can go on to backtojerusalem.com. There we have a donation button that you can find if you navigate through our website. You can find the donation button for Bibles. Click on that. Much of what we use for Bibles this year is for North Korea. And if you want to be a part of what we're doing right now for North Korea, become a gatekeeper. Because all of the major projects that we are doing inside of North Korea aren't that expensive. We're not talking about multi-million-dollar projects. In fact, if we were, I would probably back away from it. Because the bigger the project, the more expensive the price tag, the more silhouetted you are as a target. Money and activities is a target indicator for ministry in North Korea. Remember that. So much of what we do are small projects. So donors that give a couple $100 make a huge impact in the ministry that we're doing in North Korea, because much of what we're doing in North Korea is not more than $5,000 or $10,000 US dollars at a time, at the most. So God is moving with very little resources. So when I talk about donating for Bibles, don't be intimidated thinking that we need millions, because we don't. And in fact, if I was appealing for millions, I think that I would be a little concerned that we might be giving away what we're actually doing inside North Korea, because a project of that size with those massive budgets starts to garner a lot of activity, starts to bring in a lot of people, starts to have a lot of moving parts, and in some cases even begins to develop a life of its own. But gatekeepers help us to do small, focused projects. My background is I was a scout sniper in the Marine Corps. What I loved about being a scout sniper in the Marine Corps is that we worked in small teams. And the rifle that I carried, which is the 700 Remington, that Remington 700, the rifle that I had as a sniper was bolt action. One shot, one kill, one round. So I was not a machine gunner. I was not someone who stood behind a weapon that like the squad automatic weapon. The squad automatic weapon shoots maximum rate of fire of 1,000 rounds per minute. It shot so many rounds that you had to change the barrels of the rifle. Your rounds came in drums of 200. And you would attach that to the bottom and you would walk around with that squad automatic weapon, or you would have the machine gunners, which came from weapons platoons. And those machine gunners would just lay down a blanket of fire where anybody that would put their head up would be caught in the trajectory of all of those thousands of rounds going down range. And within every rotation of rounds would be a tracer so that you could walk your rounds right on to target. And not every round was a tracer, because that would be like just a solid light. But just one every few rounds. And you could do that because you had so many going down range. They make a lot of noise. They draw a lot of attention. And as a sniper, we didn't want noise. We didn't want attention. It was one shot, one kill. Small operations. We worked in teams of 2, small teams. The smallest team that is allowable really in the United States military is your scout sniper team. And in many ways in ministry, I kind of follow in that same pattern. Small, precise, targeted ministry where you're not using a lot of ammunition that costs a lot of money, but instead, one round goes down range, well aimed for the specific target. So if you feel like, Eugene, I would like to become a donor, but you guys need so much. We don't. And this year, God has laid North Korea on our heart. And in North Korea, it's small, targeted ministry. And these are not expensive projects. So every dollar matters. So if you also have a burden for North Korea, consider going back, looking at our books, getting our books online, praying for North Korea, and donating for the Bibles that we are sending into North Korea. I want to thank you so much for the support, the prayers, and for those of you that have decided to become Back to Jerusalem Gatekeepers. Thank you, and God bless.